T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff, 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Power clear.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. I am James Roy, and as always with me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
It's Wednesday. It's middle of the week. You know, we got a Monday night game coming up. I'm pretty good. I'm 1-1 in my 2 fantasy leagues right now, which is kind of good, kind of bad. So I guess I can't complain too bad.
I mean, it could be worse. It could be me. I don't know if you saw that. I 7 leagues, 28th in my guillotine, so I made it, out of 32, but 6 losses. That was brutal. I think I broke 100 in one of the leagues. Like in most of them, I think I scored under 100 points. I was the lowest scoring person in pretty much every one of them. I'm making moves. I'm in my dynasty league trying to see what I can get for Joe Burrow to see if I can bolster up my receiver and running back room. So
I'm amazed that you have that much bandwidth to be able to cover that many different leagues. Like I get through like 2 of them and then play a little daily fantasy and I'm spent. Like I don't want to do anymore. And like you're like, that's not even halfway for you.
I was going to be in like 4 leagues this year with my 2 dynasty leagues, family league, and then a keeper league that I'm in. And right the week before the season started, I just was like, you know what? I kind of want to try guillotine. I wouldn't mind doing another standard league and best ball. And I just put them all together and I managed to get, and in total, it was 56 people signed up at a $25 buy-in to play some fantasy football. So I've got $75 invested in those leagues, and I am not doing well in any of them.
At least one of them's a best ball. You set that and forget it. So that's
yeah,
good.
Pretty much. That one's pretty easy. I found out recently, you actually can't have an IR in best ball because I guess they don't want to have to sort out whether or not they need to count the points if you leave someone in IR and forget it, or I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with that, but I don't know. It was a good time, and it's been a good time being a Texans fan this whole off season. I think it's like kind of a metaphor for what it's been like to be a Texans fan for a lot of the team's history. You've heard me talk about it. Anyone who's listened heard me talk about the poverty franchise mentality, where it's all about potential. Every single draft pick that you take could be the best thing that's ever happened to the team, and every single thing that happens could potentially make this team a Super Bowl contender. And so the Texans, coming off of 2 consecutive AFC South championships, 2 consecutive divisional round exits, expectations rose year 2. I think there were some people that were frustrated with the way that year went. They continued to rise throughout this offseason, and rubber meets the road. People are disappointed with a 14-9 loss to a potential Super Bowl team. I mean, the Rams, I think, are one of the better teams in the NFC. They're certainly at least going to win the NFC West, in my opinion. And that's a really good team. So I don't want to say I don't have any problems with the loss. I was there, and it was a little frustrating at times, but I would compare it to this. Here, we'll start with this talking point. I had this thought. I'd compare it to the Astros. On a good day, the Astros have excellent pitching, excellent defense, and timely hitting. That is the best version of the Astros. When they win a lot of games in a row, they're just really they're shutting down teams with the pitching, playing really good defense. and it's just timely hitting. It's not like they're not clobbering the other team. They're not just running up 10 runs a night. They're just getting those 2 or 3 runs they need, and they're carrying on. And with the Texans, that's what it's going to be this season at their best. I don't think the offense is going to be a juggernaut. We're not going to see them go out and crush teams, but at their best, that's what they are. And we got not the best version of the Texans, because every time it was time to make a timely play, every time that something needed to happen in a timely way on offense to create the points that would have won this game, the defense did their job. But every time it came time to support the defense, it felt like something went wrong. You could look at CJ taking some pretty bad sacks. You could look at the fumble from Dario Gumbawale. You could look at Jaden Higgins getting a pick snatched right out of his hands by the defense. There's a few things that happened that just kind of tipped the scale the opposite way. And I would equate that to when the Astros just can't get the bat to the ball. Pitching can do as good as it wants to do, but if they give up a run and the Astros can't score, they lose. And so to me, looking at this loss, I'm not like, I'm frustrated because I was there and I really wanted them to win. But in the grander scheme, it's week 1. There's a lot of football left to be played. It's a new scheme. There's a lot of reason to believe that this can turn around. It's not like we're in week 15 talking about this Texans team might still be able to turn it around. So do you think that's an accurate assessment? Like comparing it apples for apples, or I guess apples for oranges in this case? It's not exactly the same, but I feel like it's a pretty good metaphor for where we're at.
I totally disagree.
Oh, what? Oh, Tom, we never disagree. Come on.
Look. I love the Astros. I love the Texans. I think there are 2 different types of expectation there. I think we're pretty clear that, AFC championship would be ecstatic. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be a step in the right direction. I think that's progression. The Texans are on the rise. We're talking about a young Texan team versus what I'd like to think is a grizzled veteran Astros team that it's World Series or bust basically for this team every year. You got fans that are out on this team right now because they're leading the division by not enough games. So they're in first place, and that's not enough. They have to be head and shoulders above everybody else because that's the bar that's been set. And I just don't think that's fair for the Texans right now. They're still really, really young. We're talking about so much turnover too, where you look at an Astros team, they turned over a couple guys, and the guys they got back, they don't even have. They're riddled with injury. I would say that's the closest comparison, is that, there's some key injuries for the Texans, some key injuries for the Astros that I think are keeping both of them from being that much better than they could be right now. I think Christian Kirk could have probably helped this team a lot. I definitely think Joe Mixon could have probably helped this team a lot. And, to be without those guys, other guys had to step up, and they're on the younger side or on the coming back from injury side. And that's a lot to ask for a Texan team to go up against, like HTU is talking about, one of the top 3 D lines in football. So, they did not get a Dolphins team that is just, disjointed and all over the place. They did not get, a cupcake. They got a really good football team in their building. I think they played them tough. Obviously, the offense is a focus of concern because the team feels like the defense is Super Bowl caliber if the offense can just pull their weight. We talked about it in the post game. There were 8 teams that held their opponent to 14 points or less. Everyone won but the Texans. So, you feel like the defense kept them in the game. Defense did their job. Offense just got to score points.
Yeah, and to speak to injuries, right? Like, I think that gets into a talking point that I'd like to talk about, which is that this team suffering injuries, installing a new scheme, and also on offense, a lot of the potential and hype centered around some rookie wide receivers, some younger guys in general. And so those younger guys didn't shine probably as bright as some people thought. I think some people thought that because Christian Kirk was injured, Jalen Noel was just going to come in and be Christian Kirk and be at that level. And it takes time. It takes development. We've spoken to the fact that it took Nico Collins 3 years. This is Xavier Hutchinson's third year. Generally speaking, the running rate for Texans receivers recently to hit their stride is about the third year. So to see those struggles from those guys meant that in moments when CJ needed to play or needed to make something happen, sometimes the chemistry wasn't there. It was a little off target. I mean, that's just what it was. And so and that's where I get to the metaphor of timely plays. I think that's the part of the metaphor that I most deeply believe, which is that this team is going to have to, and it shows, right? The biggest frustration last year in a lot of people's eyes was Laramie Tunsil's false starts and how his penalties would, come at the absolute worst time and they would ruin momentum. And in this young offense, if they're going to get this scheme down and develop and get better, they need that momentum. And so dropping a pass that could have converted for first down, committing a holding penalty or a false start or anything like could potentially be the difference between this team winning and not. And that brings up an issue of discipline. I don't feel like in our recap, I don't feel like we hit directly on discipline, but if I'm ranking the issues this Texans team faced against the Rams, at the very top of it was just youth and inexperience. They just need time to get into the scheme, but also at the top is discipline, which I think is a byproduct of their youth and inexperience. These guys are committing penalties or are just not moving with the confidence that a veteran not moving with the confidence that a veteran would move with. So I think that it'll get better. And I think that maybe some people are overreacting. There's already people that are comparing this offense to Bobby Slowick's offense. And I think they're just ships passing in the night. I think that Bobby Slowick's offense was the way that it was. I mean, initially Bobby Slowick's offense was awesome because no one had figured it out. And then as it became figured out, it was like, why can't we make adjustments? Why can't we figure it out? And it circles back to like what is reported as a stubbornness of Bobby Slowick and any number of other things. Whereas this team is new and fresh and the scheme is still kind of getting its run. I mean, we can talk about the off-season, training camp, preseason, and how good they looked then. Until the rubber meets the road, we don't really know how they look. So this first regular season game was our first chance to really see that. So I don't know. I guess the next question would be, do you feel like there's parallels between Bobby Slowick and this offense, or do you think that maybe those correlations are being drawn because people didn't like what they saw from this offense?
100% the latter. I think anytime the offense is going to struggle, people are going to have that PTSD knee-jerk reaction. Oh, well, it's the same issues, same vanilla play calling, same, inability to find playmakers, same inability to finish drives. Those are things that lost Bobby Slowick his job. I think what I see as a difference, and I see as something to build on, is we're finding out now, and later on, that Bobby Slowick was very my way or the highway, even with CJ Stroud. I definitely don't feel that Nick Caley is that way, and I do believe that he would like to work with CJ to find whatever's best for both of them. So that's something that I think is going to take time. I think that you're not going to get that in 3 preseason games. You're going to have mistakes. You're going to have, plays that don't look great because it's a new scheme. It's a new system. It's new players. I mean, there was a lot of turnover. It's easy to just say, oh, well, new guy, we should be able to just do that. But you have to teach all these new guys that are coming in to do this and then make them good at it so it's all seamless. Then you get that. That's how you get penalties. That's how you get the I forget the word you used, the inexperience, I guess. So it's just things that I think is going to take time. I thought that this was going to be an issue. I told people to be patient, that there was going to be some growing pains, and you hope that they win and have the growing pains. It's tough when they lose the game, and then you're like, well, now what?
Yeah, and I mean, as someone who has, at least in the past and to some extent now, I mean, I'm still a fan of the team, obviously. So there's some amount of emotional involvement for me where I see the team lose and I'm like, well, why did they lose? I didn't want them to do that. And so some people, to a more extreme level, instead of being like, okay, they lost, why did they do it? Okay, reason it out. Okay, I just need to wait, give it some time because I think over time they could get better. It's like this team came into this season with high expectations and they failed week one. You know who else failed week one was Tim Tebow and the Florida Gators against Ohio State before Tim Tebow cried at the press conference and then made a vow to take him to the national title. And guess what he did? He did that. So, I mean, and CJ, I think to some extent did that. I don't know if I like the way he went about it because the way he went about it kind of leaves those questions. And I'll talk about that in a second, but just real quick, we are live. If there's anyone out there has any questions or anything that you want to see us talk about, I'm trying to keep an eye on the Instagram chat and all the other chats. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth. Still one monitor at this point, but I did see a comment on Instagram. This hat, I got it from, I need to look on Twitter. I think it was like H Houston or HTX Cap Ghoul or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember the name of the shop, but I'll look it up and put it out at some point if I can find it. I know he's in my recent follows, so I'll look over on Twitter and see if I can find it. But yeah, the way CJ Stroud went about kind of, I get what he was trying to do, right? After a loss, you're like, quarterback playbook for any reasonable and intelligent leader is to take accountability, regardless of if it's yours to take. You're the quarterback, so if the offense doesn't do its job, it's your fault. You could also say that about the offensive coordinator, the head coach, but generally speaking, some level of accountability should be taken on your part. So I get that. But then, the call out is always tough to nail. You want to kind of publicly say something that motivates the team, but doesn't throw them under the bus. And I think that the comment, the use of the term lollygagging in practice, the reason I don't like it is because I mean, I don't know if I would go to talking down the way you practice this week, because if you are, in fact, looking at your schedule and assessing matchups, I would hope you didn't look at the Rams as your season opener and go, oh yeah, it should be an easy one. We'll just kind of go through the motions this week. We should get that win. So it seemed like you had a lot to say on it when I brought it up, but like, how did you feel about the way CJ Stroud went about using the lollygagging term in describing practice?
I felt really bad for him because I knew people were going to tear it apart. Do I think he meant it in the way that everybody else twisted it? Absolutely not. Do I think he was saying, in his own words, we just got to tighten it up. We got to be, sharper. We got to do things a little bit better. We got to be crisper. Absolutely. When you use words like lollygagging, though, obviously the media is going to eat that alive, and then you're going to have to defend it. And I hate that for him because it's like the last thing he needs is, the bullseye on him with respect to the media, because they're looking for low-hanging fruit. They're looking for guys to go, oh, maybe we were wrong about this guy, and maybe the pressure is too much, or maybe he's really not the guy we thought he was. Like, those things sell and people get clicks that way. And I think it's tough when, all you're trying to do is basically say, hey, we just got to be a little better, and we will get better. This is, us seeing where we could get better, and then not phrasing it that way. And then everybody going, what do you mean? You guys aren't serious? You guys aren't trying to win? And now that's the theme. That's what people want to push now.
Yeah. I mean, words mean things. So I'm not going to ever be mad at someone for being particular about how words are used. I mean, and see, that's the risk you run. And we're live right now. I could say something and be like, man, I wish I could have that back, but I don't get the opportunity to do that because it's out there. Whatever I say is out there right now. And that's how it is for CJ when he's at a press conference. Turns out those are live streamed. It's really hard to take back the words you use. So I don't know if he felt like taking it back in the moment or what, but it was just, the word carries a certain connotation that maybe wasn't appropriate for the moment or wasn't a good idea. I don't know, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I'm not going to be like some people. I think who said it? uh, biased Houston, for the Rockets coverage, I think covered it pretty well. Seems like there's a very vocal minority on what CJ's place is in Houston and how much he's wanted here, and I think that vocal minority is pushing a narrative that's just simply not true in terms of whether or not people want him to still be our quarterback. But that's I've seen a lot of people cover this, and I'll cover it here. I mean, the part of Houston sports that is both the best and worst part is that the expectation is to win, and that's always going to be what draws the crowd, is when you're doing well and winning. And the very second, not even after like a couple, like where it's like, okay, we've established a trend that this team might not be it. It's like the second that there's any sign that that's not happening is the very, like, very quickly, like, why CJ is just not doing enough as a quarterback, because wins are a quarterback stat. And also D'Amico Ryans is just a little too calm, cool, and collected on the sideline. Why is he not getting into our guys? I saw someone post, I miss Bill O'Brien, with a clip of him yelling. And I was like, I distinctly remember doing very poorly that season. So I don't know why you missed that. I mean, I'll be the first to admit Bill O'Brien, probably pretty good offensive mind. There was a lot of things that he did well as a coach, but he kind of pigeonholed himself by asking to be the GM and putting himself in a bad spot there. But it's amazing the things that people will talk about the second that they don't feel like the Texans are doing well. So it was kind of
an Astros comparison. There it is.
There it is. I mean, that's just
the Astros have been the peak of Houston sports for the better part of a decade. And the past 2 weeks, you've seen people come out of the woodwork like, this team doesn't deserve the division and somebody needs to come take it from them. They're unserious. And it's like, I don't know what you want them to do when, 37 guys or whatever are injured and they're like, mash unit, just bring somebody, insert pitcher. Like, it's so bad. They lose a game last night, and I won't get on too much. I know this is a Texas podcast, but they lose a game last night where the starter gets hurt an inning and a third into the game. And because of the way it ended, this is a trash organization, trash team, fire everybody. And it's just like, come on, man. Like, it's one game. The fact that people are going after CJ Stroud after one game, like, of a season, it blows my mind. It's I don't know. It could never be me.
It's funny because I actually just looked over at Instagram. In the comments, it says, is it time to give up on CJ? And that's just something like, I know it's not how the Texans fan base feels, because I look at enough social media throughout the day to know that that's a very minority opinion. Also, I know that social media is a microcosm of what is actual reality. But it is just interesting to see a question like that asked. And I mean, for the sake of talking, I mean, I'll entertain it, but it's not really worth entertaining. CJ Stroud is, barring some sort of massive breakdown, like if he just absolutely falls apart this season, he will be signing a massive contract to be this team's quarterback of the future. And whether you like it or not, right? Like, let's say we can look at the Jaguar situation. We can look at the Lions situation. It's two situations that are kind of, indicative of what happens when you're in that state where you're like, we need a quarterback. This guy is good enough to be our starting quarterback. Is he great? Is he elite? I don't know. But if you move on from him, you risk bringing in someone significantly less good. And so in the Jaguar situation, they now have, they're tied to paying Trevor Lawrence Joe Burrow money, and they're not getting Joe Burrow production out of Trevor Lawrence. Whereas the Lions paid a huge amount of money to Jared Goff, and they're getting reliable production that, while it's not exactly on the same level as Joe Burrow, is definitely at a high level that warrants the money. So it's just the way the quarterback market is. We can have this discussion all we want of whether or not the Texans should stick with CJ, but the last time the Texans had a quarterback that they had to make this decision with, that they drafted as a rookie, because it's really, David Carr, Deshaun Watson, and CJ Stroud are the first round picks that the Texans have made at quarterback. And with Deshaun Watson's situation, he was traded before this decision came up. Or I guess they did extend him one time, didn't they? I don't remember. That whole saga kind of eludes my memory. I tried to push it out. But with David Carr, they reached that point, 2006, 2007, and they didn't have enough confidence in David Carr to decide that it was worth giving him that money. So they decided to go find Matt Schaub and see if they could make that work until they could make a pick in the draft. And it turns out Matt Schaub was good enough at quarterback for the Texans that they didn't need to make that decision for a while. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Tom. But like for me, the question of if CJ Stroud, even D'Amico Ryans, like any of those questions, I'm just like, we're not far enough removed from success for this team. We're not deep enough into mediocrity to be asking the question of if these guys deserve to be running our team at this point.
I don't know what people expect. I mean, the idea that a guy can be drafted and just immediately, one, have the rookie season that he had, and then two, go into year two, maybe decline a little bit, but then into one game of year three, already make the determination that A, he can't get back to what he was as a rookie, because if he plays at that level, that's Super Bowl caliber, in my opinion. And then B, like that 3 or 2 years and 1 game, or 2 years and 6 games is enough time to determine whether or not a guy can do one of the hardest jobs in football long-term for your team. I mean, I constantly go back to Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Those guys took years upon years and took so many L's before they got to where they are now and are franchise quarterbacks. Nobody questions that. But the argument with Lamar early on was, oh, he's a running back that throws. And Josh Allen came from what was it, like MEAC or something like that. He's not good. He didn't come from a Power 5 school. He can't be good. And lost to the Texans in the playoffs. That could have been enough for Buffalo to be like, no, we're not doing that. Now I don't think there's anybody on planet Earth that's arguing the value of Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen to those franchises. Not at all. Those are, MVP runner up, MVP winner guys right now, odds on favorite. And CJ has all the tools to be those guys and isn't nowhere near to the level as far as like years and experience that either of them are. I think Josh Allen's 30 or 31, something like that. So how do you get there? Like you have to go through the struggles. You have to go through the wars. And CJ just hasn't done that yet. Now, for people to just quit before you get there, I mean, you're praying for Patrick Mahomes 2.0, and those guys just don't show up all the time. That the whole situation doesn't show up all the time.
Well, I think the big thing with Patrick Mahomes, and something that a lot of people talked about initially and then have kind of glossed over to some extent. I mean, some people still talk about it, but is the fact that for a lot of his really good years at quarterback, he had Tyreek Hill, and so he could let it fly, and he had a guy who could get out there and catch it. And I think that both Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes deeply regret Tyreek Hill moving on from that organization. It's a big blow to the team. And it's a wonder that they do as good as they do without him there. But I mean, CJ, I can't preach it enough. Just give it time. One of the other things, this is not a talking point I've seen recently, but it's one that's always interested me, is that when Bobby Slowick started to go downhill, I started to see a lot of people go, well, what if like you just moved D'Amico to defensive coordinator and hire an offensive minded head coach? And I'm like, look, I mean, one way or another, you are going to constantly as a team be searching for the next coordinator to coordinate one side of the ball, because your head coach can only be one or the other. And look at the Ravens, their head coach is literally a special teams coordinator. Or was. I mean, John Harbaugh came in as a special teams coordinator, probably has some strengths on one side of the ball or another. There's a reason he was hired. But when you're looking at that situation, you would probably expect that he's going to have coordinators on each side of the ball that he relies on to give him, something. And so that was always one of the dumber trains of thought that I saw. Because guess what? If you asked D'Amico to move to defensive coordinator, guess where he's moving to? Whatever city has the most appealing head coaching opening the following offseason, because he is not going to go from head coach to defensive coordinator just because you like the optics of having an offensive minded head coach. So, and also like you don't get a top 5 defense by accident. I think that D'Amico has a huge part in that, obviously, as the head coach and head defensive mind. So, interesting to say the least that we're seeing a lot of that. Looking at the way the Texans lost, my biggest understanding with the frustration comes. I was rewatching the game, and I think like the most frustrating moment in the game was the Texans had a drive that started around the 10-minute mark in the second quarter, and they drove like 6-minute drive, drove down the field. They were moving the ball like nobody's business, running the ball effectively. It looked a lot like the drive at the end of the game where Dario Ogunbowale fumbled. And they're moving and shaking, and then all of a sudden on a first down they don't get any yards, and on a second down, CJ Stroud, or the first down was a throw to Nico Collins on one of the few in-breaking routes they ran him on, which if you know about Nico Collins, his best work is on in-breaking routes, so it's interesting that Nick Caley would not adjust the scheme to throw him a few more of those, but that's neither here nor there. Second down, CJ Stroud gets sacked for a massive loss. And then now the Texans are kicking a 45-yard field goal when they should have scored a touchdown on that drive. And I think that's where I understand the frustration, right? This is a team that all day, in the same way as the Rams scored 2 touchdowns all day. All of the Rams' offensive production came at the end of the first half and at the beginning of the second half. There was literally a 2 to 5 minute stretch where the Rams effectively moved the ball and scored on a drive that didn't end in like a punt. So to say that the Rams even did significantly better, I think is a gross overestimation of what they did. Sure, Matt Stafford looked better as a passer, and because of Sean McVay's offensive mind, they put Puka Nacua in a position to catch 10 balls for 130 yards. But if we look at the scope of that game, the Rams scored 2 touchdowns, and they each happened within the last 2 minutes of the first half, and within the first, I want to say it was within the first minute of the second half, but maybe it was the first 2 minutes. It was a 4-minute stretch of game clock where they scored both of their touchdowns. And then they obviously moved the ball really well on that last drive after Dario Ogunbowale fumbled in order to run the clock out. To get it, the point is that both defenses were really good. But the frustration is that there wasn't the Texans' 2 best opportunities to take advantage of that, because the other 2 field goals were 52-yard field goals. They were at like the 35. They were never really close. A 45-yard field goal, you're basically in the red zone and you're kicking a field goal. That is, you should be able to continue to move the ball past that point and score a touchdown. You should, that catch from Dario Ogunbowale would have put him in the red zone, and would have set the Texans up for their best drive. If we look at it, they scored 3 field goals, but realistically, it should have been 2 field goals and 2 touchdowns. But they couldn't convert. And so I think a lot of the frustration with this offense comes from they're micro, looking in, or they're putting it under the microscope for the whole thing, when realistically, even on the other side of the ball, and I don't like to use comparison. I mean, the Rams offense, I don't think is the gold standard that we're looking to see the Texans go to, but both teams played against really good defenses, and both teams, whether you want to believe it or not, failed to produce. And the Rams' whole offensive production was a 4-minute stretch in a 60-minute game. So I think that the overreaction comes from the fact that we simply lost in a close game to a playoff contender. So that's why I'm not super concerned, because that very easily, if the Texans defense doesn't have a slip up, because like slipping up in the first half as a top 5 defense, it's not something I'm going to look at as the primary reason the Texans lost. But if they hold up on that drive and they don't give up a touchdown, or even if they just give up a field goal, that game goes into overtime or we win. I mean, it is the difference in the game. But you don't want that to be the talking point. You want it to be that the offense can actually move the ball effectively. So I'm tired of talking about last week. I'm tired of talking about all the things the Texans couldn't do. I want to talk about all the things the Texans can do. moving forward. So let's talk about this next week coming up. First off, excited for Monday Night Football. How do you feel about it being a primetime game this early in the season? That's how it was last year. They got the Sunday night game. Do you think it's good to start at home in primetime, or would you rather hold off till later in the season with that?
I mean, I think it's good for, viewership and to put the national spotlight on the Texans. I need them to perform, though. I feel like the last time the Texans were on prime time, it didn't go so well. I want to say that was the Baltimore game, and you're hoping that they show out. You don't want to have to defend a lackluster performance, because the Texans don't normally get the primetime love. So when they do, sometimes it's hit or miss. Whereas you kind of feel like there's certain teams that every time they play primetime, you get their best. I mean, or you get a competitive game, you get them down to the wire. The Bills, the Chiefs, the Ravens, those guys, they're always going to give you a game where you want to be considered with those teams. So I think that for these Texans, it's going to be huge. I think it's very important that if they're not going to win, that it needs to be a game. It needs to be something where, Tampa just had the ball last, they had the lead. Tampa just, found a way to score points. I can't see it. I know we do a pre and we'll get into your storybook, but I can't see that. I really feel like this is going to be a chance for the offense to get right. I think that, you can move the ball on Tampa. We've seen it in the past. Houston has been able to move the ball on Tampa. I think, the scoring should be up. I really hope this is a coming out party for some of your defensive guys, and Derek Stingley shines, Kamari Lassiter shines, Will Anderson shines. I think a lot of the games that we're going to talk about throughout the year, I feel like we're going to be leaning on the defense, and that's not a knock on the offense. That's just understanding that the defense is literally light years ahead with coaching, with personnel, all of those things, where the offensive side is playing catch up, and we knew that going in, and we should expect them to not look as good as we hope they're going to look, because you're incorporating new guys, you're incorporating a new scheme, you're incorporating a new offensive line coach.
Yeah, and I think that this Buccaneers team, looking at the way they've oriented their roster, it seems like they're already relying on practice squad and call-ups to be a part of the shuffle on their offensive line. So that seems like it's ripe for the pickings for this defensive line. Seeing this defense actually get in there, not only force turnover, but maybe make some points would be nice, because as much as I hope over the course of the season this offense progresses to a point where they can reliably score, I think early on one of the big things that's going to be a boost is, especially the offense's confidence, will be seeing the defense put some points on the board, so that it doesn't always say 0 or something that is in increments of 3, because I think that's just a huge reminder for this offense that they couldn't punch it in for a touchdown. But I look at this matchup and I like the primetime feel of it. I think it puts a different vibe in there. I don't think there's anyone who's like, oh, it's just Sunday football. I would hope that all the guys on the team are super excited to play every week, but I think there's something special, and it shows with the fans. I think with the way the players approach it, there's something special about primetime football, and getting their first win on primetime at home during the Liberty Whiteout, I think would be a really great catalyst to this team getting started on the right foot. One last question before we kind of bring this thing to a close. Just kind of looking ahead, broad strokes on this Texans team. I've spoken to the fact that I think we have probably till the bye week to really have a good assessment on what this team is. I think obviously I treat it kind of like one of those arcade race car games. There's a certain point where you hit a checkpoint and there's some more time added. But what does that look like for this team in your eyes? Like between now and the bye week, what does it look like? We're close and we win a couple of them. Does it look like, is there a win total? Is there any landmarks you're looking at in your eyes that indicate to you that this Texans team is for real this year?
No, and to be honest, I really think that like I don't agree with your feel that there's landmarks and checkpoints. I think it's a win and get in. You see it every year. Every year somebody gets in, gets hot at the end of the season, and it's a wild card, or somebody finds a way to grab the division right, at the end, and it's like, what did we see last year? Last year, I think Kansas City started incredibly slow. They were like 1-3 or something like that. I can't remember, but I know it wasn't good. And everybody's like, "Oh, this is the demise. They're gonna." And what happened as the season went on? They figured it out. They found their stride, and then lo and behold, they were playing in the Super Bowl. It for
Not
me,
very well, but they were in the Super Bowl.
100%. But you know what I'm saying? Like that's the way kind of things are. Obviously, the Eagles were head and shoulders better than everybody else. Saquon was on another level, and their defense is amazing, and that's they deserve to be the Super Bowl champions. But how you get there and how the playoffs go, the Eagles survived a couple scares last year, but they found a way to get it done. I totally feel like as the season goes on, relative to where they are in the division, relative to where they are in a playoff spot, it's going to change. I think if they're winning, if they're leading the division, then you kind of feel good about, hey, any given Sunday they can go in there and beat the big boys. If they're not, you're hoping, okay, maybe something happens, a wild card, something. But at no point in time do I go, okay, bye week, they're 3-3. Or it's week 6. I'm sorry, they'll be like 2-3, 3-2, whatever. And then you're like, oh, season's cooked. They can't win. It's just too soon. I mean, they make the playoffs and then get a favorable matchup, maybe get a primetime slot. Who knows? I truly believe that football is probably more just you have to find it at some point in time than any other sport. Momentum is so key in football, and you see it all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and to me, right, the landmarks are more specifically for like, 'cause, the Texans will play 5 games going in the bye week. If they enter the bye week 0-5, it's over. It's cooked. I don't care how close they played the games. Like if you enter the bye week at 0-5, the odds of winning out or playing well enough to win the division or even get a wild card spot are not high. So the view on the team instantly shifts from looking at the playoffs to, okay, well now we got to start looking at who's playing college ball. Maybe start watching a lot more of that. See what positions the Texans are lacking at, so that we can shift gears. But I think it's very looking at the matchups, right? So there's obviously the Rams. And then they had they have the Buccaneers, Jaguars, Titans, and Ravens. And then it's the bye week. I think the only matchup of those that's truly daunting is the Ravens if you're just looking at raw skill and matchup. But if you're adding the divisional element, those games could be wild cards. They could go either way. The hope would be to win on Monday Night Football, go into Jacksonville, get a win, and let the Titans come in here and show them why H-Town Blue is H-Town Blue. And then whatever happens in Baltimore happens in Baltimore. I mean, if a win would be massive. I'll tell you this, if the Texans lose these next 3 games and they go into Baltimore and win a game, I'm going to be so high on the Texans. I'm going to look at that and I'm going to be like, okay, cool. It's like the Army-Navy game. If Navy beats Army, it's a successful season. It's a win. It doesn't matter if they lost all the rest of their games. Now, in this case, the Texans obviously have to win other games to make the playoffs and actually have a successful season. But if you catch my drift, like beating the Ravens would be a clear indicator that they're picking it up and that moving forward we can expect more. But also another thing is that either that week or coming off of the bye week, Joe Mixon could be back. There's some injuries, some players that could be returning around that point that could also change the narrative. So I don't know if it's necessarily a specific landmark, but I do think that there are some things that need to happen between now and the bye week that'll show us that the Texans are a serious contender, or at least worthwhile in the pursuit of greatness. So on that note, Tom, do you have anything else to add before we kind of bring this thing to a close?
No, not really. I mean, obviously, we got to wait an extra day. So I'm gonna work really hard on my fantasy teams and my daily fantasy on Sunday, because I'm not gonna have to worry about what the Texans are doing, and then just be locked in on Monday.
All right. I do have a couple comments from Instagram I just looked at, so I'll run through those. All from Isaac Brown 912 says, I love the Texans. Do y'all think we beat the Bucks next week? I think we both agree that that's very possible. And then, guys, we have an easy ticket into our 1 seed for our division. As long as our defense holds and our O-line can get in shape, we're chilling. And Isaac, I couldn't agree more. I think that the defense playing top 5 level defense and the O-line figuring it out works. Oh, and there's,
from the top rope, there's Brandon.
From the top rope, Brandon Hallam, an OG, classic superstar of Texans chat rooms and live stream comments, says, okay, I'm more comfortable blaming Caserio now. And I see that. I mean, because if we're looking at the way the O-line has been handled and we think that the O-line is the primary issue, then you obviously would have to look at the fact that Caserio has had a few shots, and his record with picking offensive linemen in general has not been stellar. I don't think it's been forever. I mean, he's got a couple guys he picked up, Andrews off waivers. We can look at the fact that he has had some hits, but he also drafted Kenyon Green. I don't know. There's something to be said about how the
Kenyon Green predated him.
No, Kenyon Green was part of Caserio. That was the thing too, was that Caserio was classic McNair grace, if you will, in the same way that Gary Kubiak got that level of grace from the organization until he finally was able to put together winning football. Nick Caserio was the GM. His first draft was 2021. His first draft pick was Davis Mills. He was with the team for 2 seasons before and went through 2 different head coaches before he finally hired D'Amico, and they decided they wanted to roll forward with Nick. But from 2021 to now, he's made all the draft picks for the organization. And it's been interesting to say the least. There's been some really great hits and some really, really hollow misses. Just, interesting to see. But we'll talk about that more. I want to hold off and have that conversation next week, and with the context of how the Texans do against the Bucks, which I think they'll do good. We have our preview coming out on Friday, so make sure you tune in on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And this has been the Bullpen. I've been James Roy. You find me at James Roy NFL wherever you get your social media. Tom is at TCTom1 and Third Coast Tom on Instagram and Twitter, respectively. And thanks for tuning in. Let's see. Sorry, Brandon dropped another comment. I have to read this. And he got starting guards for the same amount he is paying for third string defensive tackles, fourth string linebackers who didn't even make the roster. And I've spoken to that. I've spoken to the fact that I think their hope is that they can bargain bin some interior offensive linemen in the same way they've kind of done with the interior defensive line in general. It's not superstars. It's just guys that can produce consistently. So we'll see if that happens the way it does. That's my final thoughts. So thanks for tuning in. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans.